Hello fellow gamers, how the devil are we? So as some of you may have seen, I did a video on Wizard with a Gun. It's basically like Don't Starve, except you have wizards and guns, there's roguelike elements into it, and it looks generally quite good fun. So the game has a western slash cowboy slash wizard stylism to it. If you've ever seen kind of a John Wayne film, or if you imagine that on a 2D plane with clean lines and bright art, then basically you've got Wizard with a Gun. But what I want to talk about today is basically a story came out on the origins of the game, and there also are some additional bits and pieces that I can fill you on if you are hungry for more features of that may all be included in the game basically. So starting at the beginning, basically there's 4 devs and they all were playing Don't Starve together, and those who have seen Don't Starve and the trailer probably aren't surprised by this in the slightest. It's got so many kind of like overlapping kind of, I won't say features, but feels that you would almost argue that it was kind of like a magical spiritual successor to it. And basically they came up with the idea that, you know, what if this was like, instead of Don't Starve, it was like this western gritty gunslinger game where spells basically took the form of bullets. And yeah, it grew into the Wizard with a Gun. And some of the memes that kind of influenced this, and you may remember them when Lord of the Rings came out, was of course Gandalf with the AK-47, and also Harry Potter where he shoots Voldemort with the gun. And it didn't stop there. Not only did it influence the game, but apparently they put it in front of publishers when they went to do their pitches and so on. So what new stuff have I found out for you? Well, let me tell you. So apparently there was a magical cataclysm that resulted in the world being destroyed, which is why you end up with these kind of like broken biomes and your tower in the middle of it. And basically hundreds of years went by and people didn't trust the wizards anymore because they blew up the world, and this is why the wizards basically went about totting guns instead. So they created something called gunmancy. And not to be that guy, obviously you've got mancy, which means divination, and you have gun, so you have the, you know, gun divination essentially. Anyway, so these bunch of wizards, they created gunmancy, and basically it was made so that they could safely control magic and channel it, instead of having kind of maybe the wild effects that blew up the world. And so were born gunmancers who do gunmancy. And I you know, going off in a section here, I love it already. I love the idea that there's gunmancers. You know, in Diablo 2, I was a huge fan of the necromancers, and yeah, it's cool. It sounds really good. Anyway, as a gunmancer, basically you go out and you will raid the ruins of the broken world, and you look for reagents to build your bullets. So I don't know how many bullets you make from items and bits and pieces, but this kind of gives you some speculation on what you'll be doing throughout the game. And further to, you know, go on from this, with the, you know, gunmancers, apparently you have bounty hunters who are basically, you know, the leftover civilization from all the destruction, and I guess they will go on to hunt you, and I guess they can be one of the enemy mob types that you fight, etc. But yeah, this is me just speculating, but I don't know if you agree with me, one that isn't too far away from the truth of the tale. So continuing on from what the dev said, so apparently you go out, you go battle, you collect resources to build your bullets and bits and pieces, but also you will probably be gathering resources to rebuild your tower, which you can upgrade and you can craft bits and pieces. And apparently this tower exists in a separate pocket dimension from the main world. It kind of was what a lot of people have been speculating. Broken worlds all around you, and you have your little safety tower which you build your base in. Interestingly enough, in terms of like the roguelike state of this game, apparently in the tower, because time doesn't affect it, if you store and make progress in your tower, it persists because time doesn't affect it. So that's the save mechanism I presume they're using. But I don't know what happens outside of the world. So if you died, you have to go back and collect up your items. This still remains unknown. Now, one of the other cool things that you can do inside the tower is apparently there's a chronomancer's wheel. So you can, you've got time divination as well. And apparently you can use this wheel to reset back the entropy of the world and basically reset the state of things. So if, you know, you've got some loot, you reset it, etc. And then you can go back and start farming it again. but when you reset the world, it doesn't reset it in the same state. So I guess this is where that kind of like RNG roguelike element comes in, because you have another different world that you can then go into. Now, another interesting element to this is apparently your magic is quite volatile and can actually blow up the, fairly large chunks, I presume, of the different, biomes that exist. And this is where you have to make a little bit of player choice. So you can either decide that you want to go out and blow up the world and get loads of resources that way, or alternatively, you keep the world alive and persist it, and then you can create things like gardens, which then you can use to farm renewable resources. So when it comes to the co-op experience of the tower, again, we mentioned that it was a multiplayer game. It's a maximum of 4. They've said that they have really put an emphasis into it being a multiplayer experience. Now, in terms of state, so you have 1 tower per server, and any kind of research and upgrades and bits and pieces that you do will persist between all 4 of you for that server. So if you go off and make your own server with a new tower, I guess you start again and do your own thing. So we do have a little bit more information as well in terms of like armors and how they impact, etc. So the hats, they all have a different look, and generally, but not for all, they have an ability tied to them, or they give you different functionality. And the same thing goes with armor. The example they use, for example, is like a thick coat will give you more protection from cold, or might give you more HP. There's also an enchanting system as well, so that you can put like properties of one armor onto another, not so much as a transfer, but like if you have a fire hat, you can make another hat a fire hat with the same abilities, but you just have to put them manually on with your enchantment. And they've basically done this so that you can choose your playstyle, and you can also choose the way you look, and not end up in one of those annoying scenarios like in Call of Duty where you've got an add-on but it's tied with a certain setup, so if you want to look like a certain way you can't, because they're not transferable. So the last thing I want to talk about is the ammo. So apparently you can combine different effects. One of them that they use is ice and physics, and they're saying that these work really well because when you freeze things they take extra damage if the ice is broken, and to break ice you need that extra force, or the extra force helps. So yeah, there are combinations like that, and there's a whole plethora of them, they said, and there's going to be all sorts of fun combos. So yeah, when we find out more about that or the game comes out, we will update you and tell you more. But yes, the game won't be out till 2022, so a little bit far away. But I'll try and keep you up to date with any news, any betas. I am really interested in this one, so I'm keeping my finger on the pulse. But for now, yeah, thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this, maybe hit the thumbs up button and the subscribe button if you want more. But until then, have a great day, and I'll speak soon.